Thanks for joining us today for our Coping with COVID-19 During the Holidays webinar. Today we'll be talking about tools to cultivate well-being and resilience. I'm Crystal Schiller. I'm a clinical psychologist and assistant professor at UNC Chapel Hill.
And I'm Nadia Charguia. I am a child psychiatrist and associate professor and serve as the director of the Taking Care of Our Own program.
So the reason we're here today is because the ongoing pandemic has been stressful for everyone. It's particularly stressful because it is chronic. We don't have a clear timeline or end date, but it's also an acute stressor because the constant changes and new concerns that are coming at us all of the time are causing day-to-day stress. It's very unpredictable. It affects all of our domains of daily living. It's health related, but it's also social because it impacts our ability to engage our social network and access social support in the way that we normally would. And so for all of those reasons, COVID-19 is really the perfect storm of stress that's affecting us all.
And so you take that stress and then you compound it with a time of year that is typically stressful. Even good stress is stress. And around the holidays, we know that stress is going to be increased, be it the good stress and then maybe not always the as good stress. As Dr. Schiller is stating, as the landscape is changing all around us, there's more unknowns as we think ahead about the holidays, and there's more unknowns there as well. What can we do that would be similar to years past? What might need to be different? There's so many decisions that are looming and so many decisions that need to be made. If you think about that in the context of COVID, however, we wanted to introduce the concept of decision fatigue. So in the throes of the pandemic right now, there isn't a decision that we can make that doesn't require all this thought and all this thinking. Nothing seems like an easy decision. Will there be toilet paper at the store? Who knows? Maybe I'll have to go to multiple stores. Every decision has all these different layers to it. And then when we think about who healthcare providers and those that work within healthcare systems often tend to be, we attract a group of individuals that often might like to be a little more perfect in their decision making. And so not only are we so tired about all these decisions that we have to make that we never even had to think about, and now these decisions of the holidays, but now we also think that they have to be perfect. Whatever we decide has to be the absolute best decision. So when thinking about that context, what we're trying to set up is the understanding that this is hard, this is stressful, this can be pretty exhausting and emotionally depleting. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about then, so we anticipate, we know that there's stress, but there could be more than that when our emotions are being as consumed as they are these days. Stress can start to morph at times from stress to burnout. And so I want all to have a sense about how to gauge ourselves in differentiating what is the stress, when does it become more than stress? And then we'll talk about it in a minute as to why do we need to try and figure that out. With stress, we see our tendencies generally are to overengage. We're going to do more than we need to do because we are feeling that urge, that urgency. Whereas when that morphs into burnout, there starts to be more of a shift. Rather than overengaging, then we start to underengage. When we're stressed, our emotions are a little overactive. Perhaps I might be a little bit more irritable or frustrated, perhaps more than I would typically expect of myself. But in burnout, you also see emotions shifting, where the term that we'll use often is emotions become blunted, that we don't care as much. I don't feel as much. I spoke about the urgency, the hyperactivity with stress. But with burnout, this too can start to morph into more helplessness or more hopelessness. Stress is going to decrease our energy. As I was just talking about all the ways that it can consume our energy. But with burnout, not only does energy become depleted, but you also start to see motivation, drive become diminished. So with stress, physical exhaustion plays a role. With burnout, not only do we have that physical exhaustion, that emotional exhaustion starts to set into. And if I can use the example, we will often allow ourselves to feel physically exhausted when we've done a lot of physical activity. If we go for a good run, we come home, we feel tired, and that makes sense to us. But for our emotional exhaustion, we often don't think about that quite the same way. But just as we have so much physical strength and stamina, the same goes for our emotions. But with burnout, when you start to get to that place of emotional exhaustion, of that emotional depletion, then there can be some other concerns at play. So burnout, when left unchecked, when we know that it's set in a bit more, can often lead to depression or to other struggles with emotional health. And this is a reason and a reminder why it's important for us to gauge where are we at on that spectrum. And during these times when there may be so many more additional sources of stress, we may need to ask these questions and reflect on this perhaps a bit more than we typically would.
And so we'll have some resources at the end of today's webinar for people who are feeling depressed or anxious and are struggling with, getting through day-to-day activities because of those feelings. More help is available. So today we're going to be talking about basic tools that everybody can use to manage stress. And I really like this quote from Viktor Frankl, who's a psychiatrist and actually was imprisoned in a concentration camp during World War II. And he wrote a book about his experience called Man's Search for Meaning. That is a really powerful book and perspective. It's a short read and I recommend it if you're looking for something to help make sense of what's going on in our world. One thing that he says in the book is everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And in my mind, that's really the meaning of resilience, to choose how you want to show up and how you're going to take care of yourself through this incredibly stressful time. So today I'm going to offer just some brief tools to help you cultivate resilience. So the first one is getting present, bringing your attention to the present moment. And that's really how I define mindfulness. It's really the practice of bringing your attention back again and again to the present moment. When we're feeling anxious or stressed, it's often about the future. So our thoughts become focused on what's going to happen rather than what has already happened. So for example, how are the holidays going to be different this year? How will I get through this? What's going to happen with the pandemic? Those are all thoughts about the future. And none of us can predict the future. So one of the things that can really help when you notice yourself getting into that sort of future-oriented anxious thinking is to bring your attention back to the present moment. There's a lot of different tools that you can use to do this, but they all sort of fall under the umbrella of mindfulness. There are different kinds of apps that you can get to practice mindfulness. And if you just Google mindfulness exercises, you'll find thousands of recordings online that you can get that are free that you can practice on your own. So I'm going to just show you one right now that you can try on your own later if you'd like, but you can just follow the sound of my voice now to get some experience with mindfulness. So this is a basic body scan exercise that you can pretty much use anytime, anywhere. And mindfulness works best if you practice it every day, sort of like brushing your teeth. So a lot of times actually people will practice mindfulness while brushing their teeth or even right after as a way of just remembering to do it. So again, it's just bringing your attention back to the present moment. So let's start together now. I'll have you take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And get comfortable wherever you're sitting now. You can keep your eyes open or close them, however you feel most comfortable. And I'll have you start by focusing your attention at the top of your head. See if you can just notice how the top of your head feels without describing it in words. Now bring your attention to your forehead, your eyes, notice the skin around your eyes. As you bring your awareness there, you may notice that the skin around your eyes relaxes, becomes smooth. Now notice the feelings in your cheeks, your jaw. Allow your jaw to hang loose. Notice your tongue. Maybe the tip of your tongue touches the roof of your mouth. Focus your attention now on your chin. Move your attention now around the back of your head, down the sides of your neck. It's a place where a lot of people carry tension. See if you can just let your shoulders hang loose and heavy. Now notice your upper arms, and your elbows. See if you can notice the feeling of your elbow touching the inside of your shirt. Now notice your lower arms, your hands, fingers. As you focus your attention on your hands, you may notice they become a little warmer. You may have a slight tingling sensation. This is a sign of increased blood flow to your extremities. Now shift your attention to your chest. Notice how it rises and falls with each breath that you take. Notice the area around your ribs. Your ribs expand and contract each time you breathe. Not trying to change your breath, Just noticing how it feels there around your rib cage. Now notice the feelings in your abdomen. Down to your hips. Notice the feelings in your thighs. If you're in a seated position, notice how your thighs are heavy as your legs become relaxed. See if you can notice the feelings in your knees. Your lower legs. Ankles. Feet. And toes. Now, as you're in this space of calm, mindful awareness of your body, you can notice how you stopped thinking just for a moment about all those things that might happen in the future, that already happened in the past. You're here in your body, in the present moment. And each time you got distracted, you came back to the sound of my voice again. And that is the practice of mindfulness. Our mind will always come up with new thoughts, will always distract us again and again. And the practice of mindfulness is just coming back to the present moment. Let's take a deep breath together, in through your nose and out through your mouth. You can wiggle your body a little to wake it back up. All right, thanks for practicing with me. We'll make this recording available to you so that you can come back to it anytime you like to listen to that again. You can also Google body scan exercise online to find just a recording of that. But again, the idea of mindfulness is that it is a practice, and practicing it each day will help you get better at using that skill in the moment of stress. You can also try a body scan exercise if you're in a stressful moment. And the great thing about it is nobody really has to know that you're feeling stressed. You can do it anytime, anywhere. So mindfulness is just one tool in a big toolbox that you can use right now to take care of yourself. Self-care is so important during times of stress. And self-care can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But essentially it means that making sure that your basic needs are being met as a first step. So this includes making sure that you're eating regularly, drinking enough water, and getting sleep. If your sleep is disrupted by stress, there are some tools that you can use to sleep better. So making sure that your room is dark and cool are basic things that you can do. Using a sound machine or something to create white noise during the night, if there's ambient noise that wakes you in the middle of the night, can be really helpful as well. And beyond that, if you're having difficulty sleeping, that would be a time that you could call our service, and we will make sure that you have that number at the end of our session today. And then beyond those basic needs, different people have different kinds of needs. So getting some outside a little bit each day can be really helpful for mood, making sure that you're moving your body. Exercise, can mean different things to different people, but essentially taking care of your physical health is really important during this time. And it is going to look a little bit different than it normally does, with gyms often being closed and recommendations to distance from others, exercise might look a little bit different for you right now than it usually does, but it is important to make sure that you're prioritizing exercise, healthy eating, and self-care. Another important aspect of self-care is connecting with others. And then one other thing that I usually like to mention is experiencing pleasure is a really great way to cultivate resilience. Making sure that you experience pleasure each day. It can be in really small ways. So listening to your favorite music, drinking your favorite tea, having a little bit of chocolate, watching a funny TV show, spending a little time with kids or talking to friends and family can be really great ways to inoculate yourself against feeling anxiety and depression. The research shows that this is a really small and simple yet powerful way to cultivate resilience. Right. I really like this quote by Brene Brown. She says, "Connection is why we're here. It is what gives purpose and meaning to our lives." And I think that's really true. Physical connection is important, but social connection is even more so important for our emotional well-being. Social connection has been disrupted right now because of the pandemic, but it's possible to make really intentional plans, especially around the holidays, to connect with the people that are most important to you. So that might look different for different people. It may mean connecting with people by phone or virtually versus in person. And it's important to make a plan that you can look forward to.
So as we think ahead about the holidays and the season as a whole, also embracing a reality, right? It's one of the knowns is that it is an unknown. It is going to be different. We don't know how, we don't know what all those things are that we're going to have to do. But to recognize it's going to be different, to ride that wave of acceptance is something that, encourage all to embrace. And so how we do that, how do we get through this? So as Crystal was talking about, just the concept of resilience. So having a plan for our own resilience, how can we tap into our own resilience or embrace that part, define that part, is going to be a critical need for all of us as we move through the season. But one thing that I want to talk a little bit about is, let's make sure that we're all clear on what is resilience. Let's define it. There is a notion that can be pretty common that resilience is about being able to bounce back, that we have a negative experience and we can take it, we can get through anything, and we can bounce back. We're still ourselves, we're still who we always would be, always are. We're not fazed by anything. That is not truly resilience. That might be more imperviousness. When thinking about the true concept of resilience, resilience is a dynamic process. It's a process that allows for adaptation and transformation when we're faced with the stressor. So it's not to say that we're always going to be the same. If anything, I hope we can all embrace that as we move through every day, every life experience, we learn from it. And resilience is a learning process. So as we may come into contact with a negative experience, there are things that we can take, things that we can learn, things that we can better understand, if not then moving forward, about how to adapt, how to transform, how to continue to move forward. And that's truly, when we talk about resilience, what we mean. So in planning for resilience during the holidays, one aspect of that, as there are so many unknowns, as we've said now a few different times, is to identify then what can we control. In that, as we ask ourselves, what can I control? What can I not control? I would also say that a third question of what should I not try to control is a question that we should also be asking ourselves. You know, what gets our stress? What deserves our stress during this time? What can help with this then is to visualize what may lie ahead as we think through the holidays, for the holidays that are meaningful to you, for your family, for your loved ones. What do we anticipate as being some of those stressors, some of those points of perhaps disconnection, of perhaps miscommunication? If we can visualize what are stressors that we may be able to anticipate, then we can start to cope in advance of those stressors and plan for what we can, control what we can. Communication of expectations and communication about both plans as well as needs is more important than ever. We are all on different pages. Everyone can have their own interpretation about what makes sense to them, what is risk, to make sure that you are communicating with the others that you are wanting to plan with or just may not be able to. But having those conversations earlier and possibly more than one time to try and help us all be on a same page, even if it's a page of we will agree to disagree. But in taking those steps, we can then address what might be some of those sources of our anxiety or our stress, because that can start to bring some definitions to what were unknowns that could start to be knowns. With also allowing ourselves a break, allowing ourselves to feel the feels I've listed here. We're not all going to be our best selves at every moment or feel fantastic at every moment, and that's okay too. Being honest with ourselves about what we're feeling as much as we are able to understand or have insight about why we're feeling it. And allowing ourselves to sit with some of that vulnerability is okay. It gets it out rather than keeps it in. There's a bit of data that shows that the more we repress feelings, they can sort of boil and fester, and maybe they actually cause more harm than good. I don't know. A few folks have mentioned such things, perhaps even Sigmund Freud. But as much as we can try to be honest with ourselves, allow ourselves to feel what we're going to feel. Hopefully we're not feeling too stuck there. And if you are, that's also a time, as Crystal had mentioned earlier, that sometimes it can be hard to sit with those feelings on our own. And if that's a sign that maybe we need to reach out to others, if it's a friend, if it's a family member, if it's someone in our faith community, if it's someone with taking care of our own, there's a number of resources that we could access. So insight being the core of resilience, to know thyself, to understand as we anticipate the traditions, the venues that we would typically go to, the gatherings that we may be able to be a part of or never wanted to be a part of, all those traditions, all those points of meaning, all those points of connection, it is beneficial for each of us to spend time to kind of dig through some of those layers and understand what is it about those traditions. I'm going to use that just as the primary example that gives me joy. What is it about the gathering for Thanksgiving that provides me with meaning? And perhaps in understanding more of the roots for the joy, for the meaning, that may allow the insight. So we can find other ways to connect to that. Again, not necessarily through the ways that we're used to. It'll be a time of creativity, a time to explore different avenues and paths. But if we can understand more of that core, what are some of those driving factors that connect us to the joy, then that may be ways that we can still facilitate those connections to have that meaning. So I've already talked a bit about what are steps then we can take to do that. So communicating with others. What is my joy may not be my sister-in-law's joy. You know, having conversations then around maybe brainstorming, how can we still facilitate some of this connection? Acceptance, as mentioned before, sometimes even talking with others to accept, well, it is unfortunate, it will be different, but let's just own that and we will move forward from that. I cannot stress enough, as Crystal said, to practice self-compassion, to cut ourselves a break. We are welcome and willing to let everyone else in our worlds know, don't worry about it, you shouldn't stress. We often forget to let ourselves know about that. And then making time for self-care is imperative. There's a lot of research, a strong amount of evidence that points to the benefit of positive psychology, of positive thinking. To reframe, it can be crummy, it is disappointing. We can have all of those thoughts, but to try and shift the dialogue within ourselves. Well, it's new, and we could learn something new about ourselves. Perhaps we can come up with some new traditions. Or if it's not, you know, maybe that's too Pollyanna, but the power of positive thinking that this too will come to an end. This is not a change that is forever. No doubt in our practice of resiliency and adapting and transforming, we'll learn from this, and hopefully we take some lessons that carry forward. But this year, it's a doozy of a year, but reminding ourselves, even if it's at that level, to shift that dialogue, that this is not forever. So another quote that I also love, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's about self-preservation. We often are very focused on others over the holiday season. We care for others. We care for others as part of our professional lives and our professional world, and that occurs within others that exist within our own spheres outside of our professional world. But it may be more important and more necessary this year, more than others, that we also remember and remind ourselves to take care of ourselves too. Carve some time out. As Crystal mentioned, it doesn't have to be, well, it may not be at all the 2-hour spa procedure or what have you. 5 minutes with a good book, with a cup of tea. Apparently we both like tea. It can be small steps, but the importance of self-care is that it's purposeful and that you are owning, I am doing this for me. Define it and label it, bring it into existence. Also helps it carry forward more meaning. When we talked earlier about the difference between stress or burnout, this is a way that we can help replenish that emotional energy that is being used at a faster pace than ever before. Being mindful and purposeful about it is a way that we can also get through this. So we've mentioned a couple of times, we've tried to leave you with some tools, some steps, some points of reflection as you move through this season, this winter, these difficult times. But we also want you to know that there are other resources that are accessible. This is an infographic that's also available on the UNC Health website and the Wellbeing website. But here lists a number of resources, including who may be available to call in the moment versus individuals that could meet for a individual session, kind of a number of resources, whatever might be most helpful for you. Hopefully you can walk through this path and just know that none of us are alone. Sometimes if we need help, there is help.
Thanks, Dr. Charguia. So this ends our presentation for today, and thank you for watching. And we are wishing you very safe, healthy, and happy holidays.
Absolutely. Take care.